Welcome to Lead the Way, the podcast where we explore how creators, journalists, and platforms are navigating a shifting media landscape. From monetization and IP protection to trust, credibility, and the role of AI. As we build LeadWire, we're having open, honest conversations with the people shaping what comes next. Our guest today is Chris Cillizza, a veteran political journalist whose career has spanned everything from roll call in the Washington Post to primetime analysis on CNN. He's now forging his own path as an independent creator on Substack and YouTube, sharing political insights with clarity and candor. In this conversation, we hope to dig into Chris's journey reporting from inside the halls of Congress to the front lines of digital journalism and what he's learning about trust, audience building, and staying balanced in an increasingly tribal media landscape. We also hope to get his take on the potential for micropayment platforms like LeadWire and whether they can actually succeed in the current content consumption landscape. Chris, we know you are a busy man. Thanks for making some time for us today.
I mean, not only did I make time, I put on a jacket. So, I mean, you know, this is serious business. I'm ready.
The consummate pro.
I know, exactly. Normally, I just have a T-shirt and shorts on.
Let's start out. Chris, what makes a good political story in 2025?
Golly, I hate to break your question down, but what do you mean by good? I mean, I think we now live in a world where it's like, is good capital J journalistically, or is good thing I can make money on, or thing company I work for can make money on? You know, I mean, we love to think that those two goals are always aligned, and they can be aligned, but oftentimes they're not. I mean, I'll give you an example. During the pandemic, I was at CNN, and CNN had very publicly launched a climate change team. It was like a 5-person team. Bill Weir was who's I believe still there, was sort of the face of it, former ABC News guy, you know, and he had gone to like Antarctica or the Arctic Circle or something, you know, to document the melting of the glaciers and of the ice shelf. And they had a camera guy and a web display person and a story. I mean, it was beautiful. It looked beautiful on TV. Pictures were depressing, but beautiful. And it looked really good online, too. Right around the same time, Marjorie Taylor Greene, the congresswoman from Georgia, posted a video where she said, so I'm paraphrasing, but something like, "This is my COVID vaccine." Now, remember, this is like right in the heart of vaccine controversy. And it was her doing lifting routine. She was doing like pull-ups and, you know, all that stuff. And we wrote up the Marjorie Taylor Greene thing, very straightforward. Like, you know, this is what she's doing. And, you know, there's no evidence that like working out is better than a vaccine or whatever. And both of those stories ran pretty prominently on CNN's homepage. You want to guess which one got millions of page views and which one didn't? Marjorie Taylor Greene. Yeah. How much money was invested in that Marjorie Taylor Greene reporting? I mean, the time it takes, like take my salary and divide it by 30 minutes or whatever, the time it took me to write that. How much money and time was invested in the climate change thing? I mean, I don't know, but like all those people's salaries, plane tickets to either the Arctic or Antarctica or Greenland or wherever, right? I mean, like huge amounts of time and energy. And that's the problem.
Well, has that always been the case? Even before sort of how we consume news now, has clickbait headlines, has it really always been the thing?
I don't know pre-internet because it's so much harder to judge. Do you know what I mean? Like it's so, and even early internet when we had no tools to sort of monitor, there was no chart beat, there was no Omniture, there was no way to be like, people are reading this or not. I still remember, I'm old, so I remember working at the Washington Post and like people would be like, that article got a lot of buzz, and I'd be like, how? And they're like, we got 10 letters to the editor. Now, I mean, people who are under 30 don't even know what a letter to the editor is, but I mean, back in the day, you used to be able to like write a thing to an open email inbox or even further back, like a P.O. box where you'd be like, I disagree with Morgan's take and here's blah, blah. And they would run those things in the print edition. So it's hard for me to judge that. I mean, the thing I would say is Parker, I resist the term clickbait because it's clearly pejorative. And I think it's overused. Like all of our goal is to get people to read our stuff. Yeah, I mean, like that, you know, and increasingly it's like the only thing that people read now. I always say you have the headline and the tweet. or, you know, the YouTube headline, and that's it. So I think a lot of people who sort of sniff their noses at journalists who are trying to get people to read their stuff are like, it's nothing but clickbait. Some of it is, but not all of it is. But more broadly, like, I think it is a problem of human nature more than it is a problem of journalism. The comparison I always make, right? If I'm in a room of 500 people who work for the National Chicken Broilers Association, whatever, some trade association, and I say like, hey, thank you so much for having me. I love fill in the blank city. It's so beautiful this time of year. Hey, just so we get to know one another, quick show of hands, raise your hand if you are a regular consumer of online pornography. Okay. Now, the chances of anyone in that room being like, I mean, if you do, you're like, well, I won't swear. Yeah. Who the hell is this guy? Do you know what I mean? Like, and I do say guy because the chances are much more likely. Okay. So no one is going to volunteer that information. Okay. And yet it's hard to put a number on this, but like the lowest, the floor that I've seen is that online pornography is an $8 billion industry a year. It's probably an $80 billion industry, honestly. So someone looks at it. In fact, a lot of someones look at it. I mean, they don't make at a minimum $8 billion a year from no one ever looking at it. Right. And this is my thing. It's like there's a real gap between who we want to be and who we are. And I think that's true broadly in terms of how we consume content, but it's definitely true in terms of news content. Everybody always says, I just wish you guys, media, produce more policy stories, you know, deep in depth of like, what's the impact on that? And I can tell you from 20 plus years in mainstream media, very few people read that. You know what they read? There was a fight on the House floor where Marjorie Taylor Greene called Lauren Boebert a bitch. Right. That's what they read. Look at what we consume. Kardashians, you know, we have a reality television president. You know, it's like who we want to be versus who we are is a real gap. And I think it shows up in lots of ways, but definitely in news content.
Yeah. That actually, it reminds me of a story that you wrote recently, just talking about your early days when you branched out on your own and you started your YouTube channel, and it took you a full year to get 5,000 subscribers. And I know you just you just got over 100,000 subscribers on your channel.
Look, I mean, talk about product placement. I've got my silver button. Hey, I worked hard as hell for that thing. I'm keeping that in every picture I can get it. It's like this big, and it probably costs them $5, but for me, it's important.
Yeah. But no, I mean, somewhere along through that process, you figured out a formula that started to work, right? That started to connect with your audience. And so what, like, you know, and I think you touched on this a little bit in the story that I read, but just, you know, break it down for us. Like, what do you think it was that really started to resonate?
Authenticity. Yeah. That's it. It's not complicated. I was limited in what I could do on video because I don't know how to do anything. I don't know how to edit video. I don't know how to edit audio. I mean, I could learn, but it's like, okay, you know, is it worth my time to learn? Basically, to your point, Morgan, I spent one full year making 2 YouTube videos a week that were, I mean, not highly produced, but I paid a guy to produce them. You know, there was lower thirds and there were pictures and all that kind of stuff. And I had 5,000 subscribers and I was paying him $200 an episode. So $400 a week times 52 weeks. I will tell you, at 5,000 subscribers, the YouTube AdSense or the Google AdSense model ain't great. Right. I was getting checks for like once a month, you know, $9.37. I was like, is it really even worth them to write this check to me? Like, and so the math didn't add up. So I said to the guy, like, look, I love your work. I just can't pay $400. I can't pay $1,600 a month and make $9 a month. Like, I'm not great at business, but I feel like that's not the right way to do it. Yeah. So I was like, you know what? I got a MacBook Pro right there. And, you know, it was the one sort of cost I undertook when I went into this by myself. And I was like, I'm going to open QuickTime up and I'm going to talk. And I had this background set up. I mean, this is my real office, but I had this background set up from TV during COVID. So I kind of had a background that worked generally. I got some lighting and all that. And I just started being like, you know, what do I want to talk about today about politics? What do I think is interesting? And just did it. And I posted every day. I still do. And I just think it felt more real to people. It didn't feel produced. Yeah. You know, it didn't. I always tell people, because I think this is true of TV even now, don't act like you're on TV. Have fun. If they don't like it, they don't like it. That's fine. But people don't really want like stiff newsman being like, and that's the news. I just, that era is dead, you know? And so I think it's like, that's why I think independent media does so well, because there's no rules. You know, it's like, if I want to do that, I just do it. I don't have to ask the executive producer who then asks, you know, a bigger boss who then asks a bigger boss. I'm just like, I'm going to start making these every day and just talking to the camera. And it went from, you know, 5,000 to 115,000 in a year. Mm-hmm. Some of that, look, that was 2024. People were interested in politics. Like, you know, I mean, it's not like it was, it's not, context matters, but I do think that I think people want real stuff.
Does that also take you, like, is that where the trust is created as well? Because I feel like now trust is almost a bad word, but more important than ever.
It's the most important thing. And it's the thing I think that this is why I'm long-term pessimistic about legacy media. I don't think it's going to go away, but trust is everything, right? It's the only, I mean, especially, by the way, when we're in the era of media that we're in, where you need people to give you money, whether you're the Washington Post or me. It doesn't work without that. There's no model. There is no journalistic model, independent, one-person operation, Washington Post, giant operation, where if people are not paying for the content, you can make it work. It's not possible. I mean, I don't think that's enough money for a Washington Post, but unless you convince people to subscribe, it's not going to work. And that is a trust thing, Parker, right? Like, the biggest thing that people can do to trust in you is to say, I will part with money that I have made that I could go spend on other things to support this journalism. I know how people can come to trust me, Chris Cillizza, because it's all out there, man. Like, I got laid off from CNN. I started this thing. I'm doing my best to try to call balls and strikes in all of this. It's not perfect, but based on my experience. People know stuff about my life. They know that this is my home office. They know I don't have anybody other than my wife helping me. Like, you know, it's like, I'm a somewhat sympathetic figure. Like, if you like me, the $6 you donate to me on Substack or on YouTube isn't going to, like, you know, the HR person. Like, it's literally going to, like, keeping the lights of my home on so that I can connect to the internet so that I can do this. That's like a sell and a trust thing where it's like, may not agree with me all the time, but like, here's where I'm coming from. Here's my background. You can look at zillions of pieces of content I've created and be judging for yourself. The problem with any big legacy organization, you know, I felt this, I encountered this when I was at CNN. People would be like, where do you work? I'd be like, CNN. They're like, you gave the talking points in the debate to Hillary Clinton in 2016. I'm like, all right, let me stop you right there. Like, I didn't work at CNN in 2016, so I definitely didn't give the talking points because I was at the Washington Post. And Donna Brazile, I mean, it's not even clear she did it, but, you know, Donna Brazile, who was like a contributor at CNN, they had at that point a zillion contributors. She consulted with the Clinton campaign or something. The point is, when you have an organization that's 10,000 people big, somebody is always doing something stupid. Mm-hmm. That if you have to answer for that, I just don't know how it works. You know, I just don't, because there's always going, it's like any organization, there's always going to be some dumbass doing something that they shouldn't be doing. And like, yes, I've done stuff I shouldn't do as my own, but I can be like, I said this, I meant that, apologies. And I think that gets you some trust. Whereas like the Washington Post, CNN, they're just too big. It's too big. I don't know how you build trust in an organization that size, because there's so much opinion already out there about them, mostly negative opinion and distrust. Any little thing, you could do 100 good things, and if there's one tiny little bad thing, everyone's like, see?
Yeah.
And then it all gets eroded. So I'm long-term pessimistic about that. And I don't, if people don't trust you, I don't know how you get them to give you money to do what you do.
Yeah. That actually segues really nicely to, and I love a good segue, but
of course, like the train broadcaster you are.
Exactly.
But like a quote from a story that you wrote recently, specifically about the Washington Post, and I took a couple different paragraphs here and snipped them together, so bear with me. But and this was on your Substack. It's called "The Washington Post's Collapse is just the beginning." And quote was, "There are tricks of the trade you learn by doing that job that even the smartest student doesn't know when he or she starts a job. Journalism, especially, is a learning by doing job, and we all need people to mentor us. What the Washington Post has now, and will increasingly move toward, is a newsroom populated by 20-somethings. These are the people they can pay a relative pittance and get lots and lots of content out of. What that model means from an editorial perspective is this. These once mighty institutions will become solely newswire services. They will be able to tell you the what of a news story. They will struggle to explain the so what. Why does this news even matter or not matter? And the now what? What's the next thing to expect in this story? And I love that quote because it's, I think we all see this and we all, we get this feeling. It's like the efficiency experts have showed up at legacy media because they see the model struggling and they're trying to make it work. Yeah. And they're trying to make it work by doing the things that we all know are going to undermine the credibility and
100%
the trust that these organizations built up over.
We'll just have AI write everything. Oh, I'm sure that'll solve the problem.
Exactly. And so I don't think it's a coincidence that platforms like Substack are doing so well, or that journalists like you that are just being honest, getting in front of the camera and telling people what you think in an honest and transparent way, why you all are doing so well. And it's kind of crazy to say, but you're sort of kicking the ass of legacy media. And so I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. Like how does this thing resolve itself? And is there any going back?
Well, let me first say, I think it is super easy to dunk on these legacy media folks, the people running these things. But I will tell you, just because it's dear to my heart, because I spent more than a decade there. If tomorrow Bezos called me for our regular weekly call, and he was like, "Hey, Chris, always good to talk to you. Hey, will you run the Washington Post?" Now, I'd probably be like, "Sure," because that's cool, and you'd probably pay me a bunch of money to do it. But if I was being honest with myself, Morgan, I don't know what the hell to do to solve their problem. That's the thing. It's so easy to be like, Will Lewis, the current publisher, what an idiot. Or the guy running CNN, he's not doing anything. Okay. I'm not trying to defend that they're doing amazingly, but I want to tell these people, what would you give me 5 things? I don't even need a cohesive strategy. Give me 5 things, because the reality of this, right, is this is a tectonic plate shifting in how people consume content, period. Now, are there things they are doing that I think are, in fact, kind of speeding up their decline? Yes. The getting rid of institutional knowledge, which is just purely a financial play, right? If you've been there for a while, you make more money. That's how every organization works. So, okay, we're just going to cleave off everyone who makes a certain amount. Okay, but then what are you left with? And then the whole AI thing. It's I get it. I understand, and I am not a Luddite. I am constantly finding ways to try to use AI in ways to make my work life better. Not writing content, but I just think it's I saw the Post has launched this Ask the Post AI thing. I just think you are letting the snake in, and then you're to borrow a Donald Trump metaphor, and then you don't act surprised when the venomous snake bites you. That's the nature of what snakes do. It's like those people, you remember in the 90s and 2000s, people would be there'd be these horrible stories. It was chimpanzee bites nose off of owner, and the woman would be like, well, he's my pet, and we just take a bubble bath together, and I drink wine. Dude, it's a chimpanzee. It's a wild animal.
Right.
It's going to do what a wild, the guy who was this big game hunter, he's hunting some buffalo and it killed him. Yeah, it's a wild animal.
Yeah.
It's going to do what it does. Mm-hmm. AI is going to do what it does. So I think they are hastening their decline, but I also think it's easy to stand if you're me and be like, I can't believe this. Yeah, but I don't have 50 ideas of what I would do. I think it's a rapidly changing industry where not only is the way that where people and how people consume content is changing, but also to Parker, to your point, that the long-term trust problem that the media has had is catching up with it in a major way, because there's now all these alternatives. You can go to other places to get your news, to get your analysis. And, I think ultimately the future for legacy media will be as kind of newswires, because it doesn't make sense for me to hire 25 people to cover the state, a bunch of state capitals, or to go to Alaska to cover a Trump-Putin summit or whatever. I need somebody to be there to be like, then Trump said this, then Trump said that, because that's the only way I can do my job, and it doesn't make sense for me to hire someone to do that. They still can do that. The breadth and scope of their news gathering operations, I think, are probably what they'll become. The problem is it's hard to monetize that. It's hard to make money off of that.
The one thing I sort of see happening with AI, and we've spoken with quite a few people that are in this industry, is that, that newswire type reporting, that's the thing that AI probably
100%.
Right?
That's what it can do.
And when you completely commoditize your own industry, there's a reason that commoditized businesses don't make any margin.
Nope.
Right? That's because anybody else can do it and replicate exactly the work that you've done.
You need to
there's no real difference.
The way I think about it all the time with my stuff is, what's the widget I make? Make theoretically. What's the widget I make that you can't get anywhere else?
Yep.
And that's, it's easy. If you're Nate Silver and you have a polling model and you're well known, that's his widget. That's a pretty obvious one. But I think for a lot of other people, myself included, what's my widget? Because if it's just Donald Trump, 5 takeaways from Donald Trump's summit with Vladimir Putin. I mean, I like to think I can do that better than other people, but you can get a lot of that stuff. It's totally commoditized now. So, right, this is my whole, like, you're writing the story of your own doom and selling it to people like it's going to save you. Yeah. But I think, honestly, it's an emperor has no clothes situation. They don't know what to do. If they knew what to do, they would have already done it. And again, I don't know what to do either. I know what to do for me, but I don't know what to do for those big organizations.
Yeah.
Well, do the big organizations even matter anymore? Do we even need them? Or, what advantages do they offer a journalist, if anything?
Right now, news gathering. Someone has to, every day I'm looking for stuff that I can do analysis on, reported analysis on, thoughtful commentary on. But without somebody or some organization gathering that content, it's hard. Now, will AI get good enough that it can, take local, like, tweets from people who are at a campaign announcement and turn it into a story that I could then use? Probably. I don't think it's there yet. But that's, Parker, right now, that's how I use it. But again, let's say Nancy Mace, the congresswoman from South Carolina, is running for governor. If I want to find out what she said in her announcement speech, what I still do, and I'm thinking of actually maybe just downloading Perplexity and doing it that way, but what I still do is go to Google and I type in Nancy Mace campaign announcement. And I'll get like a Twitter post where she's posted the video, and I'll get a couple local stories on it. And then I can use those quotes to kind of build something. But I don't know how much longer again, I think it's really hard to make money off of that, because I'm not like, I need to read Morgan Ramsey's take on Nancy Mace's announcement, because it's just a news story. Like, if the three of us went to Nancy Mace's campaign announcement, our 3 stories that we produced are probably going to be pretty similar. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, like maybe mine would be marginally better because I've done it longer, but honestly, probably not. And if we had an AI producing it off of, geolocated tweets from it or whatever, it'd probably be pretty close. And that's the problem. Even for someone like me, who is like trying very carefully to be like, okay, this source and not that source, I think I mostly go in there and I'm like, if it's marginally a credible source, I'm like, this is fine. I'll just use this. That's hard to make money off of, because it's like, if it's $2.99 at Costco and $25.99 at Nordstrom, I'm going to go to Costco because it's probably going to be about the same. And that's the problem. Or it's free somewhere else.
Right.
That's the problem of journalism. And this is, I think, more into your commoditizing thing. It's like, if all you're selling is this happened and the who, what, when, where, and why, well, I can get that almost anywhere. Why the hell would I pay for it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, okay, let's take it back a little bit, Chris, because we want to build community around journalism here. So we want to know a little bit more about you. Take us how you ended up here in this independent space. I mean, we want to hear about Roll Call. You look at the talent of the Roll Call team that you had assembled back in the day, and some people that have gone on to do some big and amazing things. Can you just kind of talk about how you started there? And
can I set this one up real quick too, just because I think like the roster of people that came out of Roll Call was kind of amazing. So our our mutual friend Chris Brody Mullins
Yep.
posted to his LinkedIn the other day just about roll call, and some of these names I was blown away. So it was Brody Mullins who wrote The Wolves of K Street, which is just a
Incredible
fantastic
book. Go read it.
Yeah, anybody that hasn't read that cares about what's going on in
You
Washington.
want to know how
should go
Washington works? That's the best book you can read, truly. Not just because he's my friend.
Yeah. No, and I love the book, and actually I love the work that he's doing now on Newswire. He
Yep.
seems like he's kind of just kept up where he left off in Wolves of K Street. But so Josh Bresnahan, who co-founded Punchbowl News, Jim Vandehay, who founded Axios
and Politico.
and Politico, which I didn't
Yep.
know, and then
Wow.
obviously Chris Cillizza. But the list, I mean, it goes on. But
Paul Kane, who's the senior congressional reporter at the Washington Post. Mark Preston, who's in Uppity Up, I don't know his title, but at CNN. Rachel Van Doggen, who's an editor at the Washington Post.
Yep.
I mean, my late great editor, Tim Curran, who was an editor at the Washington Post, he passed away earlier this year. But I mean, it was a real incubator.
Yeah.
And it was cool because it was like right on the cusp of, this feels so long ago. It's so funny how change and innovation moves exponentially rather than in a linear way. But like, I remember being there in the early 2000s, and like we would push the print newspaper out. It would come out on like a Wednesday morning, and then we would put the stories from it online. Like, it just seems like so. I mean, like, you can't even imagine. I try to tell, like, when I teach college kids now, they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah. And it was just like links, very basic. But I just learned that I really liked journalism there. I had worked for George Will, the conservative. I mean, he's not really a conservative anymore, but at the time, conservative columnist when I was in college in D.C. And sort of had gotten in there, and I worked for this guy, Charlie Cook, amazing guy who's now retired, who's a political handicapper. And then I worked for Roll Call, and that got me kind of the bug of politics, which I didn't really have. I was not a young Democrat or a young Republican, or, I didn't write for the school newspaper. I didn't do any of that stuff. But I sort of got into it, and this was right around the time where these big media organizations, that they moved too slow, but they were realizing, and again, I know this feels like, a million years ago, but they were realizing that the internet had like not only was it this unstoppable train coming down the tracks, but like there were real potential there. So the Post hired me in 2005 to write a blog, which no mainstream media outlet had, no big media outlet had. And basically the plan was, it's so funny how thinking goes awry. The plan was, this wouldn't have worked, but their plan was, we've got all these political reporters and they can't fit everything into their print newspaper stories. So we'll take the stuff that doesn't fit in there and we'll put it in your thing, Chris, your thing, like sloppy seconds. Sorry to be crude, but that was kind of how it was viewed. The problem was, and again, this talk about not seeing the future, none of those print guys gave a shit about the internet. They were like, they couldn't be bothered. They weren't mean to me or anything. They just didn't care. It was the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference. It was indifference. And I had this thing where I had to justify my job and my existence, so I couldn't just sit there. I had to do something. And so I was like, well, I guess I'll start writing. And the great thing was nobody cared. So I could do whatever. I could write in first person. I could do rankings. I could say this is dumb and this is smart in ways that at that time in the mid 2000s, no one in mainstream media did. Somebody put it to my old boss, Marcus Broccoli, who was at the Wall Street Journal, then at the Washington Post. He was at the Washington Post when I was there. He said, you were building houses in the part of town no one wanted to go into, and then it became the cool part of town to live. Right. So housing values went way up, and I had built a whole shit ton of houses there. And that's just luck. I mean, honestly, like if the print reporters had cared and had seen that the internet was going to be our business and had given me stuff, I would have just been a guy like I was 26, like just aggregating content. You were
young enough to not know any better.
Totally. Yeah. And again, I can't emphasize this enough. They didn't care. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't think they wanted me to be, if I'm posting like white supremacist content, they would have cared. But the point is, it's like they didn't care. They weren't paying close attention to it. They were still focused on like the newspaper and A1 and are you on the front page? Not even the homepage. Are you on the front page? So I had this freedom to try stuff that I never would have had if I had just been like, hey, you're covering Congress for the Washington Post. So that just led me to try to innovate, and also to have a healthy skepticism of the phrase. And you guys have been in like actual business world, but to me, at least in the media business world, the thing I hated at CNN and the Washington Post was meetings where somebody said some version of, well, the way we've always done it is, and I'm like, let me stop you right there. Like, the way we've always done, I mean, this was true in 2005. My God, it's a billion times more true now. The way we've always done it doesn't work anymore. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's demonstrably, objectively true. Yep. So us being beholden to the way things have done, that's not going to work. I'm not suggesting we throw everything out, but we can't just be beholden to, well, in the 70s when we were basically running they were printing money in the basement of the Washington Post. It was such a good business. Well, that's not how it is anymore. So when I went to CNN, I would love to say it was like this deep journalistic decision. It was more money, and I could put it was a higher profile, and I could be on TV and writing under one place. When I was at the Post, I was a contributor at MSNBC, but I was kind of half there and half at the Post. And this way I could work it all at once. And then, how did I become an independent journalist? I got an email the week after Thanksgiving 2022. It was from the bureau chief, a guy named Sam Feist, and a woman I've never heard of before. And I did a quick Google, and she was the head of HR for CNN. And I sent my agent at the time a note, and I was like, what is this? And he's like, you're getting laid off. He's like, it's possible it could be something else, but when the HR and the bureau chief say, hey, can you come in for a meeting at 11 a.m. this morning? It's probably not going to wind up good for you. And, dude, that was devastating. I mean, truly, truly devastating. I had this image of myself as this star, as this, kick-ass reporter and high profile, and people knew me, and celebrity in Washington. I mean, not like real celebrity. And I was just all blown up in one day. I mean, the benefit of being a public figure is you make good money, you get people recognize you on the street, whatever. The downside of being a public figure is like when you get fired, lots of people in your world know about it. I couldn't do the thing where I was like, oh, I'm pursuing new opportunities or whatever, like people do on LinkedIn. People knew. It was in like all the tip sheets and all that. It was like, Cillizza leads group of high profile journalists laid off at CNN. And so I was like, what the hell? I'm going on. I'll try to make this part brief. I was like, what the hell do I do? And the only, I found myself, I made it through the holidays because, it was like travel and Christmas and it was fine. And then it was like January 8th. I remember very distinctly. Kids go back to school. They're older now. They were like 13 and 10 at that point. I dropped them off at the bus at like 7:30 in the morning. I came back home and I looked at my calendar and it said, pick kids up at bus 3:30. And I was like, what to do? And people are always like, oh, just work out. I'm like, well, I'm not going to work out for 7 hours. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not that guy. Yeah. So it was selfish. Like, it was honestly, I was in a terrible mental place. Just really struggling about like who I was and what would I do and what we're going to have to move out of the house and take the kids out of school. And so I just started writing. Substack was still little-ish. Much littler than it is now, or much less well known, but they were nice. They reached out to me. A guy from YouTube who I had known reached out to me and he was like, hey, start a channel, just start doing stuff. And that is how I got sort of like back to what felt like normal to me. I mean, I always say like, I didn't have any grand plan to become an independent creator. Like I thought I'd be in mainstream media forever.
Yeah.
At what point does your ego repair though? Cause it is an ego shot.
Yeah.
And now you're doing it on your own. Now you're kind of a trendsetter. I mean, maybe it's a different kind of ego, but at what point do you say, man, I really like this and maybe this is better than what it was before?
Right about the time where I realized I could probably make enough to keep the lifestyle of my kids and me and my wife together. The biggest thing, this is more information than you need, but the biggest thing, I don't know if this has happened to you guys, but when it happened to me was like, I don't want the kids and then also my wife, but the kids to like notice anything different. You know what I mean? I don't want to, they're in private school. I don't want to pull them out of private school unless I have to.
You've got to be able to fund their travel sports habit.
Exactly. I have to fund their massive travel sports budget. Morgan and I know a lot about that. So that was, honestly, the focus was that, like the comparison I draw is like, do you know, it's not really a thing anymore, but like back in the day, those like steamships, or like, they always had like the grimy guy in the basement just shoveling coal into this like giant fire to make it go. That's kind of how I thought of myself. I mean, not like it's probably the only time I'll compare myself to a blue collar worker. I mean, I literally write and talk for a living, but it was like, I'm going to shovel as much coal as I can into this engine, because it's the only thing I know how to do. I don't know how to raise money from people. I don't need VC people, I don't have private equity people. And if I did, I'm not sure they were giving money to me. Like, I am going to make as much content as I possibly can. And to borrow another transportation metaphor, like, I'm going to make the plane go as fast down the runway as I know how to make it, right? I'm going to push the throttle all the way on myself. Do I know if I will reach critical velocity where it will be able to take off under its own weight? No. And so, Parker, to answer your question, about 8 months ago, I was like, okay, there are enough pieces in place that I feel okay about this, that like I'm going to be able to do this at least through 2028. Like I'm going to be able to maintain this and do it. And yeah, I never thought, one of the things people always tell you when you get laid off, or at least they told me, I remember this because it made me crazy. They'd be like, look, man, this is the best thing that's going to have happened to you. You're going to look back on this and be thankful. And I literally was like, fuck you. Like, unless you have health care and several $100,000 to give me, please don't tell me that. Like, it's like at a funeral, you got to say something. There's nothing good to say. Unless somebody was going to be like, hey, Chris, I got this great job. It pays $2.5 million. Do you want it? Like, there was nothing that anybody was going to say. So I understand why people say it. But I remember thinking, like, the next person who says that, I'm going to punch them square in the nuts, because it just enraged me. But, it's now coming up on 3 years. And it was a blessing that I didn't realize, because I got a 2-year head start on everybody realizing that this is where media is moving. So again, to use that building houses metaphor, I was building some houses, on this independent news landscape, where now I have 5 conversations a week with people in legacy media reaching out, being like, hey man, like, what would this look like? How did you do it? Now that said, it sucked mentally, grinding and thinking that, your kid's future and your life depends on your ability to keep them in their home, depends on your ability to drive people to subscribe to your content. That's not a place I want to be again, but I'm sort of glad, it's one of those things you look back, you're like, I don't know how the hell I did that, but I'm glad it got me to here.
Yeah, I mean, I think you raise a really important point here, and this is one of the topics I really wanted to ask you about. Your timing on this, a lot of it out of your control, but your timing on this was pretty good, because this was, I think, 2022 was kind of when Substack was really starting to catch fire and people are paying attention. Do you think it's a lot harder now for somebody to launch their Substack and to start to attract an audience?
Yes, and that's what I tell these people I have conversations with. I think there is this idea, especially now among journalists, particularly legacy media journalists, that are like, I'll go over to Substack and make $1 million. It's like, no. Like, I'm not sure that was ever true. And so it was like, hey, if you're on Substack, you've got 5 options. You got a 20% chance of somebody becoming a paid subscriber to you. Like, it's like anything else. Early adopters, or if you're in on the ground floor, you're going to reap the benefits. You get on the 30th floor, you're going to make less. You get in on the 100th floor, you're going to make less. So I try to tell people that it's like, you got to have a niche. Just, I'm going to write and talk about politics. Politics is the most crowded space by far on Substack. I think the bet that the Churning Group made on Substack is, the fund, they're now the lead sort of investor now in this most recent round, is Substack is positioned to do on fashion and sports and music what they have done on politics, which is build this super robust monetizable vertical. But on politics, which is what most of the people I talk to are not like, I want to write about fashion. I'm like, look, man, there's a lot of competition and there's more every single day, right? Yeah. And what do you do? What is specific? What is the niche? You go back, what's the widget? What's the thing that people cannot get anywhere else in theory? And two, because they can't get it anywhere else, are willing to pay for it. Because you can have 100,000 free subscribers and that nets you $0. Mm-hmm. You know, so it's like, you got to figure out, you want to have volume, but you also need, it's not like YouTube where it's like, okay, I have 115,000 subscribers, AdSense sells up against that. So you can subscribe for free and I can still make money. That's not how Substack works. You could be a free subscriber to me. You know, I make $0.00. So it's like, I do tell people, don't think there's just an easy pot of gold there, and think real hard about, if you're in the politics space, especially, what's the niche? What's the widget? What's the unique thing that you do that nobody else does? Because that's the only thing people will pay for. As much as people say, like, I just want to support independent journalism, I think they do want to support it. But when you're like, okay, by support, I mean you give me money for what I do, they're like, I mean, so it's like, it's the way that I found to make money on Substack, convert free to paid, is give them something that they can't get anywhere else. Appeals to their virtue and their willingness to support journalism for the sake of journalism. It gets some people, but way less than you think.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about what we're doing? Because you have been
terrible idea. Thank you for having me.
Such a wonderful supporter, and thank you for being an early adopter to LeadWire and helping us get our idea of paying for content as you read it versus subscriptions, and not to take away from subscriptions. We get that, and we're Substack users. We have our subscriptions, and we'll continue to do that. But what do you think about this idea, and how can it be an additional tool for independent creators and independent journalists that want to make a living doing this type of work?
So I think there are three obvious avenues beyond just straight up subscriptions that I think have to happen for someone like me to make a sustainable income beyond subscriptions. One, bundling content, right? This is not complicated. You know, my Substack is $6 a month. It's not a ton of money. I always say people spend more than that on a latte at Starbucks. But let's say I like 10 Substacks that are each $60. Well, now it's $60 a month. That's not nothing, right? So there's got to be a way to say, you can pick one or two from politics, sports, culture, or you can pick 5 from politics, and you can pay one rate, and then that money gets parceled out to someone like me and other people. That's number one. Number two is sponsorships. YouTube does it. Beehive does it. Substack doesn't do it yet. I think they will. But, you know, like, I'll give you an example. I'm going to do this sponsorship with Ground News. I don't know if you guys know Ground News, but basically what it tries to do is tries to aggregate using AI, aggregate stories that are being written about, you know, subjects in the news, and then give a score based on how fair or unfair the coverage is. Is the coverage leaning conservative? Is the coverage centrist? Is the coverage to the left? I find it really useful. So, like, when there's a sponsorship that aligns with my values, I'll do it. So that's number two. And the third one is micropayments. I send this to Morgan every time I see it, but, like, you know, people are agitating for this. People are agitating for it organically, right? I assume organically agitating for, like, okay, like, I like Chris, but I don't want to pay $60 a year, but I really want to read his 2028 Democratic presidential rankings, and I'll pay for that. Mm-hmm. And my view is, I mean, I think there's two ways to go on this, and Morgan and I have gone back and forth on a lot of it. And obviously, because I'm involved with you guys, you know where I'm going to land on this. But the two arguments are, well, you're actually screwing yourself because you're getting $1 where you could get $6 or $60, right? Like, you're getting $1 from someone who might become a monthly or a yearly subscriber, and instead it's a one-off. My view is, I don't think that's the case. I think that the person who pays $1 probably won't pay $6 initially, or $60 certainly. And the biggest hurdle I've found on payment stuff is getting someone to get over the mental hurdle that content creation isn't free. Right. And so in my view, usually I do $1 if I work with you guys, but in my view, it's like, even if I could do a quarter, any amount that gets a person in their mind to make the connection, this is good, I need to pay for this, matters to me, right? And because journalism is unique in this regard. Like, if I go to my accountant during tax time, I don't say to him, like, here's all my crap, can you file this return? I assume there'll be no payment involved. No, of course I'm paying him because he's doing a service that I don't want to do. I mean, it's true of almost anything. We understand that there are transactions. I go to Starbucks, the barista makes the coffee. I'm like, I don't say, like, is this one free? No, it's a business, and like, they're doing it, so I don't have to do it. I want to make my own coffee, I do it at home. We journalists have done a really poor job of that because we gave it away for free for so long. With very few exceptions, the Wall Street Journal being one, these places were all resistant to subscriber paywalls. So the average consumer of news got it in their head that it should be free. Which is ridiculous, because if you paid for the print newspaper, it wasn't free. You didn't get the Washington Post at your doorstep for free. You paid for it. You paid for content. Yeah. But we screwed that up in the very early 2000s. I always date it to right around when the Apple Music Store came out. There was like Napster, but you always felt like, if you're me and you're a rule follower, you always felt like you were breaking the rules somehow by downloading it. Is this illegal? Are they going to come to my house? And then Apple Music was like, you can buy any song for 99 cents. And I bought 1 million songs because it was 99 cents. If we had started at the Washington Post or CNN or any of these places and said, you can buy any article on here for 50 cents, as soon as we start posting things on the internet, 50 cents, or you know what? You can read every article on here for $5, we'd be in a lot better place. Yeah. So in a way, what micropayment is doing is trying to right that idiocy, that terrible business decision we made at the start, to say, if you want journalism, if you think journalism matters, not everybody does, but if you think journalism matters, you have to understand it needs to be funded. And this is a low bar for entry to fund it and to get people building that muscle of like, I like this, I'm willing to pay for it. In the same way we do for concert tickets, Spotify subscriptions, Netflix, the coffee that I like to drink. Like, there's nothing that we really like and value that we expect to be free except for journalism. And we need to fix that. That's why I'm such a believer in what you guys do.
Well, so tell us who's crushing it as an independent right now that we should be paying for, or that you're paying for? Who's doing a really good job?
A couple people who I think are really good. Matt Lewis is a political writer on the right, not Trumpy, but on the right. The Intersection is by this guy named Patrick Ruffini, Republican pollster. Thoughtful guy, a lot of data analysis. Simon Owens, media reporter, great stuff about the future of media and sort of that world. Breaker, which is on Beehive by Lachlan Cartwright, also really good. I'm a big fan of media stuff. Status by Oliver Darcy, which is on Beehive. I'm just trying to scroll through and see if there's anybody else I definitely like. Emily Sundberg doesn't need me to recommend her anymore because she's already gotten like 9 profiles in the New York Times. You know what I mean? Like, she's doing just fine. I'm trying to think if there's anyone else obvious that I really like. Abe Fleischer, again, he doesn't need me. He's got like 75,000 subscribers, but his is called Wake Up to Politics. Gabe's story is amazing. Started doing a newsletter when he was 11 years old. Wow. Daily political newsletter. He graduated from Georgetown in last May. He's been doing a newsletter that whole time. Great guy. He does really smart. Talk about your niche. This is such a good example. I don't have the patience for this. That dude did a 4-part written series breaking down what is in the one big beautiful bill and what it means for average people in their lives. Like, wow. No one is doing that. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because it takes a shit ton of time.
But it's super important, though.
But you need, again, like, know your lane, define your lane, and run in your lane. And I think he's a really good example of that. I remember meeting with him at a place by where I live, a coffee shop, and he was just graduated from college. And I was like, look, here's the deal. Your appeal has always been, hey, look at this 16-year-old kid. He's writing a newsletter. That's crazy. This kid. Yeah. I was like, but now you're just an adult. Now you're a young adult, but you're just a 23-year-old guy now. So the whole like, hey, this kid, he runs it out of his parents' basement appeal is like worn off. Now you started, I think you had like 40,000 subscribers there. You start at a pretty high place, but like you got to find a next act. Mm-hmm. You know, you're not always going to be the young savant who's doing this. And to his immense credit, he writes once a day and he goes deep. You know, he's doing like 15, 16, 17 minute reads. So I really enjoy his stuff. And I think it is rigorous and it's not what everyone else is doing.
Yeah. Well, and the silver lining here could be that, you know, the wire service stuff, it gets commoditized like we're all saying, but it does free up people like you or people like Gabe to go and just be super specialized and like really help us understand these issues. Like if I want to know what's in the big, beautiful bill, there's this guy that I know is just kicking ass with his coverage and taking me deeper than I would ever get from a newspaper.
No, you could never write that much in a newspaper. I mean, they would never okay it and people would probably wouldn't read it. But again, this is one other quick thing about the difference. Someone like Gabe or I don't need 1 million people to read anything I write. Yeah. I mean, it'd be great if they did, but I don't need it. And I don't need 50,000 paying subscribers. Again, it'd be great. But if I have 5,000 paying subscribers, I'm making $300,000 a year. Yeah. Right? And so that's another problem. The scale problem for the Washington Post or CNN or even the Times. You know, the Times' success is, as you guys know, is not really built on journalism. It's built on smart investment in non-journalistic things like Wordle and the recipes and all that stuff. But there's the scale required to monetize a piece of content to pay for all of the infrastructure, the healthcare for all those people, the parking for all those people, like the computers for forget the journalism. It's just vast. And it's like on that economy of scale, I don't know how it works.
Yeah. Well, Chris, before we wrap this up, tell us where we can read you, follow you, see you on your YouTube channel. Give us all your plugs.
The best way I would say is just my name and Substack or my name and YouTube. You can go directly to them. It's Chris Cillizza, CILLIZZA.substack.com. You can search it on Google or wherever, like my name and Substack will come up. Same thing, youtube.com/Chris Cillizza. You can follow me on, I mean, literally every platform. That's a sole separate challenge of like, how do you populate all these platforms in a smart way? But those are the two ones that if you want to support me, those are places where you can. I also have a Buy Me a Coffee account set up for people who just want to make kind of a reoccurring donation once a month or whatever. Happy to take it in any way you can. The thing I will say and why I'm so appreciative of what you guys are doing, like this doesn't work without people being willing to fund it. It just doesn't. It's like every other job. You cannot make, like I was making on Google AdSense in that first year, I can't make $9.87 a month. Right. I mean, I just can't, you know. It doesn't mean everyone needs to pay for it. I understand some people are just not financially able to. I get that. But if you are in a position, you don't have to even buy my thing. But pay for a few people out there who are doing this. And that includes the Washington, you know, you want to subscribe to the Washington Post, do it. But pay for a few organizations or entities or people, because without it, I always tell people who hate the media, how has it worked out for societies and countries who don't have a free and independent media? And the answer is not well. So, you know, it's like you gotta invest in things that you want to see in the world, because otherwise you will not see them in the world. Do not take it for granted.
Chris, thank you so much for everything you're doing for LeadWire, for spending some time with us today.
Thank you all.
Hopefully we'll do this again. This was a lot of fun.
Happy to do it. Thank you. Thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, Chris, thanks a lot, man. Really appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you all.